Hi, thanks so much for joining me tonight. We'll be going over the college application process for students with learning differences. And so just a little bit about myself. Growing up, I had a learning difference. It was called visual perception disorder, and it was not fun. I had extended time on tests. I was in resource room, and that carried me all the way throughout college. But I had success in college. And when I was in college, I learned about the importance of advocating for myself to make sure I was getting that extra time if I needed a note taker. And so after my experience in college and I got into college counseling, it made me want to work with students with other learning differences because I want to see them have success like I did. And when I got into college counseling, I've had the opportunity to be an admissions reader for Pitzer College. This allowed me to see what a successful college application looks like for, a highly selective liberal arts college. And since I've done college counseling since 2018, I worked with a variety of students from first generation to Ivy League bound, and now I'm developing a niche of students with learning differences. And when I'm not doing college counseling, I have two other jobs. I teach life skills to young adults who are on the autistic spectrum and have other learning differences. And I'm also a high school therapist. I most recently got my master's in social work from Simmons University and hold a certificate in college counseling from UCLA Extension. So just an overview of what we'll be going over. I'll talk about key rights for a student with learning differences, the importance of an individualized education plan or an IEP, the importance of a student advocating for themselves when they get on campus, how to properly disclose the student's learning difference on applications, the types of services offered in colleges, and then I'll end with a variety of examples with colleges that have good services for students with learning differences. So key rights. This is a mouthful, but I think it's important to go over. Students cannot be denied from college for having learning differences because they're protected by the Americans with Disabilities Act. And during the application process, the student doesn't have to tell the school about their learning difference. Colleges have to provide accommodations for all classes or on-campus extracurricular activities and housing for students with disabilities or learning differences. When colleges typically require students to provide documentation of their disability in order to get those accommodations. So that will come from their IEP. And accommodations and other adjustments are made depending on their disability and needs. The school does not have to lower or change their basic requirements, services, programs, or activities for that student. Students cannot be charged extra for academic adjustments, certain programs or activities that are available to students without disabilities. Most schools have a disability service office. It may have a different name from school to school, and they help students with accommodations. They face issues of discriminations or any academic adjustments. So the Individualized Education Plan, or the IEP, this is the most important tool for the student to advocate for themselves. And without this, the student will not get services when they get on college campus. So it's imperative that the student or the family make sure that that IEP is up to date before entering college. And you may have to get re-examined in order to receive those accommodations because they expire every couple of years. And parents, you may know this, but your school district can pay for the student to be evaluated. So that's another reason why you want to get done before the student graduates from high school. And certain accommodations may not carry over into college, and that's going to vary. So maybe a student got double test time in high school. Maybe the college is only going to let them get time and a half, just something to be aware of. And I've also seen this before. You want to make sure that student has the necessary medication when enrolled. So the student has ADD, ADHD, and they take Adderall, and you don't want to send the kid with that half a prescription or like, oh, whoops, I forgot to get that, because they're not going to be successful. You want them to be fully prepared and ready to go because college is a big investment. So advocating. When the student arrives on campus, it's so important for them to go to the disability office the first week, become a familiar face. That way they know like what kind of services they get, who's in their corner, who's their point person, everything like that. And the disabilities offices are advocates for these students. And the office will encourage students to utilize these services. And so some students will have a fear that like, oh, I'm new on campus. I don't want my new classmates or friends to know they have a learning difference. And so sometimes they don't take the proper steps to get those accommodations that they need and deserve. And that can lead to this stat that less than 1 in 20 students with learning disabilities disclose their specific learning difference in college. And so then let's say of a student who really wants that big state school experience, they should know that public universities do have a higher dropout rate of 50% than compared to smaller liberal arts schools. Large state schools are obviously they're fun, but they can be overwhelming. It's easy for students to get lost in the crowd, maybe hard for them to learn that lecture size classroom. And then 28% of students drop out of college in general just due to academic disqualification. And you work so hard all 4 years, and then just because you didn't prepare, maybe you didn't advocate for yourself as much, students end up dropping out. It's really unfortunate. One study found that undergraduates who waited until after their first year in college to request accommodations were 3.5 times more likely not to graduate within 6 years. That's a hefty price. And so it's just really important that you talk to your student about advocating for themselves when they get on campus. And if they're not doing well in class, or they don't have the help they deserve, this can lead to mental, emotional, or psychological issues, which can cause 3% of students dropping out. Stress really adds up and can build in a variety of ways. So it's really important for the students to take care of their mental health and have the services they need. So this is the big question. Should you tell colleges about your learning difference? In my opinion, you should, because it can help the student actually gain admissions into their dream school because it's seen as diversity. All those years of that student struggling in school, getting pulled out of class, they finally get a win on a very important time in their life, applying to college. It's a win for them. And it gives students the opportunity to write really strong personal statements about overcoming their learning difference, because it's something they're so familiar with. Students always write better when they know what to write about, what they know. Students can write this in their main essay or in the section, is there anything else we should know about you? And if the student does choose to write about their learning difference, it shows that the student has grit and that their learning difference doesn't hold them back in any way. It's an important opportunity to tell their story in case they had like a strong GPA but low test scores or unusual pattern of grades. And explain how they succeeded in the face of a challenge. Admissions readers want something that's going to pop, and typically these essays show vulnerability, and they're reading hundreds of essays. They want something that's going to stand out. And on the off chance, like a student does deny a student for having learning difference, I've even heard of that. It's legal. The student may take the attitude that they wouldn't want to enroll there anyway. The student obviously has the right to not disclose their learning disability, but it's important to notify the college they're going to enroll at, to notify their disability office as soon as they're accepted. That way you can get the ball rolling, get that IEP, any paperwork in order, and just go over accommodations. So how to write about your learning difference. I just want to reiterate, it can help the student gain admissions because it is seen as diversity. The student should not write a story with the intention to make the admissions committee feel bad for you. They should write a story that demonstrates your unique qualities, how you're going to be a great fit with that particular school. The student should not just simply write about how they dealt with their disability, but they should communicate how working through their disability transformed them or helped them grow. Students should not present themselves as someone who has overcome every issue related to their disability, because that just seems repetitive and a little ridiculous. They should present themselves as someone who makes the most out of every difficult situation they face. So are they a glass half full or half empty kind of person? And so some of the services that are offered at colleges are going to vary, but some of the basic ones are extended time on tests, note takers, and early course registration. And then some institutions go well beyond, and we're going to get into that a little bit later. And they'll have like separate programs that are really involved and on occasion, not usually require an additional fee. And it's really important that your student knows that you and your student are in agreement with what they need to be successful in college. If the student just, yeah, I know. Really sit down with them, like, do you know? Because college, as I've said before, we all know this, college is a big investment. You want them to take it seriously and that they're getting the most out of it. So if you ever get the opportunity to visit some colleges and you can stop by the disability office, it's like some good questions to ask, or like, what kind of assistive technology do you offer? What do you consider the most difficult majors or classes for students with learning differences? Is there a transitional summer program? Can students with learning differences skip foreign language requirements? In that case, I've learned personally, they might take 200-300 level classes outside their major that's culturally related. And do they have math and writing labs, which are also very popular, even for students who are not enrolled in the disability office. And as I said before, some colleges, they'll be really big advocates for the students, or the students will just have to advocate for themselves. So really make sure your student is aligned and know what they need to be successful. And if they want a college that's maybe a little more hand-holding with their support, that's totally fine. I have a whole list that we're going to soon go over. So 2-year college first. You might be thinking, my student worked so hard for 4 years. They don't deserve to go to a 2 years college. But sometimes, community colleges are an excellent stepping stone for high school and a 4-year institution, especially for students with learning differences. I have clients who are on the autistic spectrum, and they go to West LA College and Santa Monica College, and they have great support and services for those students to be successful. If the students do go to 2-year school, it's a great opportunity for them to practice advocating on their own while still being supported at home. It's a good time for them to knock out challenging general education requirements, maybe science or foreign language, math class could be really hard for them, especially in a large state school setting. Maybe a community college could be a little easier for them. It also allows the student to mature. Like I said before, and we all know this, that college is expensive. You want the student to be taking the right colleges, not switching majors every semester, really get the most of their experience. So just 2 examples in the LA area. Santa Monica College that has the #1 transfer rate to UCs, and it's the best community college in California, to my knowledge. They have academic counseling, books on tape or ebooks now, note takers, priority enrollment, a study assistance program, which can be individually or within a group. Learning how to study effectively, super important. And, if you get to learn how to study in a group setting, another opportunity to make friends and find your people. And they also have like separate proctoring for students who get extended time, and a variety and then other additional tutoring services. West LA College, they have a diagnostic and assessment for students with learning disabilities and their eligibility, and see how they fit in their program. They also have learning strategies, or like study skills classes, can provide ebooks or books on tape. They have program planning and counseling. So if a student has a certain path or idea of career area they really want to go down, that's a great program. They can assist the students with the registration process, which can still be a little overwhelming and confusing, especially if you have a certain small window you want to get those classes you want. That's a really good thing to go over. And there are special accommodations for students who have like hearing loss or visual impairments. And they also have a variety of tests, proctoring, and related accommodations. So, extended time, taking tests in a separate classroom. All right, so now we are on to examples of colleges with strong programs. These are all be a variety of four-year institutions across America. We'll start off with American University in DC. So there they'll have individual meetings. Students will have individual meetings with a program coordinator or counselor and consult with the coordinator to discuss registration and course selection, making sure they're taking the right classes, they're on track to graduate. They also have like a weekly program for students who are on the autistic spectrum. That's really important because if a student is on the autistic spectrum, it's a good place for them to find their community, let them know they're not alone. And, plus they're also living in an urban environment. That could be a very stressful and challenging environment to be in. DePaul University in Chicago, they have the Center for Students with Disabilities, and they specialize with students who have ADD and other disabilities. And more than a dozen, they can offer more than a dozen accommodations depending on the student's particular need. So that's great. The more types of services, the better. Northeastern University in Boston, their learning disabilities program has students meet twice a week with a specialist to work on their academic and general life skills. They'll be studying, make sure they're taking care of their mental health. The specialist also directs students to other resources that are available on campus, like specific subject tutoring. It could be math, science, foreign language, who knows? All right, University of Arizona. So for any students who want a big state school experience with the learning difference, this is a great program, the SALT one, that stands for Strategic Alternative Learning Techniques. And it's very comprehensive. And the students there will have weekly meetings with a strategic learning specialist, and they'll have access to many other services, including some of the following: content-specific tutoring, educational tech support, life skills and academic workshops, along with psychological services. University of Connecticut, another big state school in my home state. Let's go Huskies. They have the Beyond Access program, where students meet with weekly trained strategy instructors to develop important skills. And they'll go over a variety of areas such as time management, organization, study skills, stress management, huge. It seems like a lot of students can get stressed out, especially if they leave things to the last minute. Self-advocacy, another go one, memory and concentration, social skills, career prep, health and wellness, and reading and writing strategies. So many good things that they can help students with there. Then we have Marist College in New York. And so their student will work with the learning support program, and they work with students one-on-one, and they meet them twice a week to make sure their needs and goals are being met. And during this time, these sessions can be really individualized. It's going to vary from student to student what those sessions look like, but they typically involve like improving writing skills, note-taking skills, organizational skills, exam skills, and time management. Hofstra University in Long Island, New York. They have the program for academic learning skills, and they work with students who have specific learning disabilities and ADD or ADHD. Students there are provided with a learning specialist for the duration of their attendance at Hofstra, and in this case, there is a one-time fee. Texas Tech in Lubbock, Texas. This is a good program. They're able to handle students with more intensive needs. The Buckhart Transition Academy is a 3-year program for students who are on the autistic spectrum, and these students can take advantage of internships with the support of a professional job coach, because students who are on the autistic spectrum or maybe like Down syndrome can be discriminated from jobs, and that way they're really gaining important life skills, so they don't get fired for being poor on the job. They really gain those skill sets for them to be independent one day. University of Denver in Colorado, they have the Learning Effectiveness Program, which is a weekly one-on-one academic counseling. They have subject-specific tutoring, time and organizational management assessments, and special student events. So another good opportunity for students to find their community. And they also offer social skill building resources and peer mentoring. University of Colorado Boulder. This is great for such a big state school setting. They make accessing test taking and note taking accommodations very straightforward. Sometimes those things can slip through the cracks. They also offer an alternate format production and access center that has adaptive software and the ability to print alternative class materials for students with disabilities. UC Berkeley, a surprising one, but they have so many disability specialists and experts at their program. And over 1,600 undergraduate students are enrolled in the disabled students program. And they make sure that students are getting to class regularly, meeting with faculty and peers to study and learn, which is really important for a big state school setting. And I'm sure Berkeley is very rigorous, so it can feel very overwhelming at times there. UC Irvine, all the traditional stuff, and the people in the office there work well with the faculty to keep them up on certain students, to make sure they're not falling behind. And they provide disability counseling. And since some smaller schools, Curry College in Massachusetts, they have the Program for Advancement of Learning, or PAL. And they were the first in America to focus on students who have language learning disabilities or executive function disorders or ADHD. Mitchell College in Connecticut. So in this program, students can test the college experience before they commit full time. It's a unique program where they kind of help students transition from high school to university. And if the student feels that that they're not ready for college, that's okay. They can defer a semester or so. Then University in Boca Raton, Florida, they have the Achievement and Learning program, and students will have access to a variety of specialty services that includes the following: academic coaching, assistive technology, and all these students get to have an iPad, so that's pretty sweet. They also have diagnostic assessments in case there's something, they feel like the student's IEP has changed at all. Offer tutoring and alternative testing environments for those who have extended time. And so then we have Landmark College in Vermont. So Landmark and Beacon, these are specifics for students who have like higher needs or strong learning differences. And at Landmark, they offer academic advising, coaching. They have a good center for academic support, variety of counseling areas, and especially a summer program that way helps ease them into a transition of college. And then Beacon College in Florida. So this is a unique school, and they offer both associate's and bachelor's degrees with students with learning differences and ADD. And they have a really high graduation rate at 70%, which surpasses the national average graduation rate for students with learning disabilities. The college's support services include a center for student success, and they have a very highly trained learning specialists and tutors with a math lab and writing center. So all these students at these two colleges are going to have learning differences, so they won't have that, maybe less that insecurity or fear of like how are my peers going to perceive me, because they all have some sort of learning difference. I really hope you guys found this helpful and informative. I'll open up for some questions. And if you'd like to ask any questions privately, please make a note of this slide. Our founder offers free 30-minute consultations for PALI families, which are a great chance to better understand the road ahead. Thank you so much.
Hello, well, there was one question submitted. It is, are students with learning disabilities held to the same standards as other applicants, such as with grades? For example, if your focus is more on performing arts, how do you position yourself for entrance into competitive schools with great performing arts programs, such as NYU, USC, or UCLA, if your student doesn't excel in core classes due to learning differences?
That's a good question. I think if the student, is really like an extremely talented artist, and they're like they're really shining bright, it really kind of comes down to like their GPA. If they have like a 3.3, but they're incredible artists, it's going to be a little hard to get into USC or NYU just because those schools are so competitive. But maybe like they could probably get into like an Emerson or Savannah College of Art and Design, or like a school of visual arts. But you, in those applications, you really would want to highlight how their learning difference didn't hold them back at all from doing what they're most passionate, and that this is what they're meant to do, is to be an artist of that caliber. I hope that helps.
Someone just asked, do 504 plan accommodations get considered in college? Or is it only if a student has an IEP?
I believe it's only an IEP, but like you'd have, I think it's going to vary from school to school. I think 504 plans are a little more like K through 12. So I would always recommend getting the IEP. Oh, wait, I think there's one more. Do students have diagnosed disability from a physician or an IP alone? Is it enough to qualify? An IEP, so you'd have to go to an educational psychologist. They do the IEPs, but because a physician, they can do some of the testing, but an educational psychologist will be more comprehensive. And if they play a sport for edition 1, 2, or 3, I don't believe student athletes offer additional IEP help. I mean, athletes already get priority registration. Um, and if they're D1, then and they go early decision to a school, then like that already helps their chances. And athletes already in general kind of get like a lot of tutoring help. So I think there's like, if it's an athlete, they're going to have additional support and services, which is a good thing. But so I would say if they have a learning difference and they're a recruited athlete, get the IEP, because the more services and help they can have, the better. So if diagnosed with ADHD but no IEP, they cannot get services. That's correct. The colleges need an IEP to kind of back that up. The student can't just walk into the disability office in the first week like, I have ADHD, give me services. There needs to be like substantive proof from an educational psychologist. Oh yeah, I think there are some more questions coming through. No, having an IEP does not hinder their acceptance in any ways. Colleges can't discriminate for a student for having a disability. And as I mentioned before, students who have a learning difference that's seen as like diversity. And if diagnosed with autism but no IEP due to good grades, does it get considered? It's it would hard to it'd be hard to consider that with. I mean, you'd probably have to show like a lot of documentation, because if the student has autism, do they want services in college? Because if they do want help in college, then they would need an IEP.
And to the question about videos of other webinars, yes, if you reach out to our office, we'd be happy to email you the recording links of any of the past webinars as well.
That's all I got. Thank you so much, and hope to hear from you guys soon. Have a good night.